Heya Mushlings and outsiders, welcome back to this new and last episode of the Musha's Painting Academy for Beginners 101. We have finally reached the end of this wonderful journey together, and today I'm going to show you the technique to paint a night ambience for your miniature. Basically, we can recreate this cool effect even without necessarily using the fire OSL effect, because maybe our model doesn't have a torch in hand, for example, but is simply hiding in the shadows and has a more diffused OSL effect, which is the moonlight. Before we start, let me give you a very quick theoretical introduction about how moonlight works for a nighttime atmosphere. First of all, moonlight is cold. This is super important to keep in mind because we'll need to use bluish or silvery tones. There's absolutely no way we can create this effect using warm tones like red, orange or yellow. Another key point is that moonlight, when hits an object, due to its very distant source, will be soft and diffused. We actually covered light intensity in detail in the previous episode, which focused on a stronger OSL. If you can't remember what we said or haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you go check it out. Obviously, depending on the scene we want to create, the light could also have a clearer and sharper direction, like a moonbeam filtering through the trees, but that's, of course, it's situational. In our case, we're going to paint a piece that is simply touched by the diffuse light of the moon. To achieve this effect, shadows need to be deep and the illuminated areas should be instead light and delicate. The contrast will be strong between the lighter shadows area to create a sort of drama, as I did for this piece, for example. But let's do it better, as I painted it many years ago, and it was my very first attempt to recreate that kind of scene. The atmosphere we're going for should suggest silence, mystery, or calm, or even tension, of course, depending on the scene we're building. In our case, we have a fierce and confident assassin that shows calmness, and she's called Kira from Black Crow Miniatures. Alright, with any further ado, let's paint our miniature. Okay, so the first thing to keep in mind is that our OSL, being the moon, will always come from above. You don't need to pre-shade the miniature, made it to let you see it better. Of course, we are visualizing a scene with a full moon shining at its brightest. Another very important thing to remember is not to overdo the light when painting, as it could ruin the whole nighttime effect. The key is to keep the palette subtle and balanced. So for the colors, instead, we are obviously starting with different shades of cold blues, while for the areas which are touched by the light of the moon, we will use desaturated warm colors like orange for the skin tone and brown for the clothes. Everything toned down by mixing them with black and light to recreate a nice contrast. Another trick we can use is to add a tip of dark blue to each color to keep them desaturated and maintain the night ambience. The other method would be to add a thin glaze once the colors are dried, but it can leave stains if not done properly. So let's use the easiest method for this tutorial. So let's start with dark colors to set the nighttime mood, but remember to leave some areas exposed where the moonlight will reveal the true colors of the miniature. When reaching the light shadow boundary, like here, we don't want to create a sharp cut like this, okay? But instead, let the blue overlap slightly into the lid area, like this. This is because later we'll brighten up and color the lid parts using glazes that blend from shadow to light, allowing a much softer and smoother transition. Okay, so light will hit all the surfaces facing upward, such as the shoulders, the head, raised weapon, and so on. So we can use light blues to gradually build up the light, finishing with pure white highlights on the sharpest edges to simulate direct moonlight reflection, as for our daggers, for instance, here. While for the darker shadows, here on the cape, for example, we can apply light blue glazes to simulate the bounce of moonlight reflecting off nearby surfaces. Hair cape is perfect for this effect, for example. As you can see here, all my brush strokes goes from the shadow part to the light part, with very thin glazes to have a nice and smooth transition. Of course, you can always add more blue and fix it. Or even glaze on the other side. You can also do a sort of wet on wet. We studied the very first episode of the Academy, where the color is still wet and it helps us to blend everything. If you use glazes for the shadow, do the strokes from light to shadow. If you're using colors from the lid area, brush strokes goes from dark to light. Remember this. You can switch all the time you want to adjust everything, but the strokes direction is the most important thing here. Here, to smooth the transition, I've added tip of blue to my brown. So first I use pure dark amber, and then I add a tip of blue here. Oops, sorry. It was purple, sorry. To make it darker. Okay guys, so this should be the final result. I didn't record everything because it was pretty boring going back and forth every transition. The most important thing is that this was my whole palette. So I played only with these colors. I added the max light on the edges of the kunais. And for each color I changed, I always add a tip of blue, dark blue. So if I made something brown, then I added a tip of brown to it to create the whole transition for each part. Of course, to make nighttime effect more interesting, we can introduce secondary light sources for narrative contrast, for example, candles or fire. The warm lights will create a counterbalance to the cold moonlight. In this case, we can combine both techniques, returning to the OSL effect we covered in the previous episode. So now it's your turn to give it a try, and please let me know how this method worked for you. I really hope that this tutorial is going to be helpful, and I want to remind you that my painting academy is completely free, but if you like to support my work and let me keep working on more video tutorials like this, there's a link below in the description to my Patreon page, or even better, check out my special merchandising where you can find cool stuff and gadgets. And of course, feel free to join my Discord community. I've put the link down below in the description as well. We're already more than 250 people who love painting, learning new techniques, and making new friends, of course. There are both Italians and foreigners, so don't be shy and join us. So thanks again for watching, guys, and see you in the next Academy Series 2.0, where I'm going to teach you more advanced painting techniques and tools such as airbrush, for example, because with the end of this academy, you should be able to reach a painting level that allows you to paint easily any of the topic we treat here. Therefore, we are ready to face more advanced techniques and painting methods like pros. See you guys in the next video, and don't forget to warm up your brushes.